Okay, this is going to be a talk about how money is made and the parable taught in The Wizard of Oz. First, I want to start off with, this is the cover of The Economist magazine in 1988. I'm such a weirdo, I happen to actually get it. And I remember it because on the front cover, they were getting ready for a world currency, and it was going to be called the Phoenix. Okay? And if you look at the date on here, it's 2018, and that was their date that they planned on having the new world currency out. Now, the election of Donald Trump was unexpected to say the least, and Hillary was going to crash the economy and get the new world order with this new currency in. I'm going to go back to that later, but I want to go back to something that hardly anybody knows. There was all kinds of money things going on when Frank Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz. There was the gold and silver, there was the silver crisis of 1873, and here's a metal ad for the Wizard of Oz. The funniest children's book ever written. Well, it wasn't actually written for that reason. He wrote it to teach children a parable about how money is made. And then he saw how much he sold of these things, so he cashed in on it and wrote 10 more books. Excuse me, a total of 10 books. Now, the rest of them don't have anything to do with it, but the very first one does. So let's go over the characters in The Wizard of Oz. There's the wizard himself, who is the president in the Emerald City where you go to get money. There's the Cowardly Lion, who was William Jennings Bryan, who yelled a lot but never actually did anything, ran for president several times. There's the Scarecrow, which is the American farmer, who was smart but was so busy he wasn't paying attention to what was going on in Washington, hence, he was giving him a brain. There's the Tin Woodsman, which represents industry. And what's the very first thing the Tin Woodsman says? Oil. Other characters in it, the Munchkins. Those are just the happy people in towns that, as long as they're happy, fed, and content, they're pretty useless, but they keep things going. In the book, there's no ruby slippers, there's silver slippers. There's a few differences between the book and the movie. Now, I think and here in the drawing you can see she doesn't have ruby slippers, she has silver slippers on. And she's on the yellow brick road, which is endemic of gold. So silver and gold are mentioned. Sorry for all this damn wind here. I had to stop. I wanted to do this earlier, but my yelling neighbors got their kids out there. Finally went inside just before dark. Like I said, the flying monkeys are endemic of the American Indians, which were still prevalent at the time that he wrote that. Remember, the West wasn't even closed, really, when Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz. So, The Wizard of Oz came out after the Federal Reserve was founded, and that's the current system we're under. And the international bankers got their claws into the economy in 1913 with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act, signed in at Christmas time when everybody was out, when Congress was out of order, by Woodrow Wilson, who was laying on his bed as he was dying, saying, "I've betrayed the American people and I've doomed the country." Well, yeah, it's a little bit late then, Woodrow. And the book that really brings it together is called The Creature from Jekyll Island. They had to kill around 500 people to keep it going. And you got to remember, at the time, the average person only had about $23 cash on them. So as long as they have to trade in the actual currency, they didn't really understand or care what was going on. So let's go over the story of The Wizard of Oz. I'm gonna put this on here so you can go back to it if you can't remember what I'm talking about. So Dorothy gets sucked up by the tornado in her house, and she gets taken off to the magical land of Oz. Well, as the house falls, it kills one of the wicked witches. Now, the professor that taught this course, we spent a whole day talking. It's a book about populism, the first one anyway. What's the first thing that gets killed in a depression? Well, it's the housing property. Like in 2008, the thing that triggered it was Freddie Mae and the housing bubble. So the housing bubble killed the first of the banks. Then what did the Wicked Witch want? She wanted to get her, so in the book it was silver slippers, not ruby slippers. Why? Because the big banks are like Pac-Man. They want to eat up the small banks. And they wanted to get her silver slippers, her silver as it were. Now, the professor that taught me the course had an alternate view of the good witches. He said the good witches were actually two presidents, the 21st president and then William McKinley, and that's why McKinley was the other good witch and they got killed. I think the good witches were the small banks that were outside of the control of the big banks, the international banks. But be that as it may, the good witch tells her, you know, as long as you have the silver slippers on, in other words, silver, she can't touch you, and stay on the yellow brick road, meaning silver and gold are real money. And what kills the second witch? Remember, they throw water on her? Well, liquidity kills, breaks a depression, injections of liquidity into the market. And gold and silver are measured and sold in ounces, but they're not, it's not spelled, it's abbreviated, it's not abbreviated OU, it's abbreviated OZ, hence the Wizard of Oz. And one of the reasons you know that this is exactly what they were talking about, there was a war going on when Frank Baum was writing the book. Remember, the movie didn't come out till way later, when it was one of the first colorized movies for aimed at children. The British were had gone to war, the Boxer Rebellion, because the Chinese wouldn't let them sell heroin to their own population, and hence towards the end of the Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy goes back to see the wizard, she goes through a poppy field and falls asleep. It's heroin, and you also know the reason that it's a true allusion to the book is she goes through 7 halls and 3 flights of stairs. So the silver crisis of 1873, and so you may remember that Obama said about Trump, he wasn't going to wave a magic wand. Well, the president, along with the Treasury, has control of a thing called the SWIFT money system. And he can juice up the economy. You see him, we would have crashed in 2018 if he hadn't become president, but because he deregulated a lot of stuff, a lot of people that were on the other side, let's just say the Republicans that didn't believe in Obama, had kept some of their money out because they thought it was going to crash, or they didn't like what they saw. That juiced up the economy a little bit. I do believe 2008 was never really addressed, the 2007-2008 monetary crisis, and I do believe this money system's coming to an end. I think that's why he hasn't bothered cutting spending. He's doing his best to just keep the thing going. And what is Trump known for? He's known for saving his wealth through bankruptcy. So I think we're going to go off of this system, and we're not going to go to a world system. We're going to go to a monetary system by our country, by our own. And what's going to back it up? We have more oil than anybody on earth. We have nuclear weapons, and a little known fact, there are 2 large gold reserves in America that hardly anybody knows about. One's in Chocolate Mountain Reserve. The U.S.'s best gold mine commercially goes right up to the fence, and it gets richer as it goes to the fence. That reserve was put off limits because of environmental issues in the 80s, and I think it's just because there's a whole bunch of gold down there. There's also a whole bunch of gold in a blocked off area of the Grand Canyon. There's some Marines guarding it. You can't get to it. But anyway, I believe that's we're going to go back to a gold standard. But anyway, check out the Wizard of Oz. The OZ mean is how silver and gold is measured. Now, if you read a biography or things about that, you say, well, Frank Baum says he was looking at the filing cabinet and at the bottom it said O to Z, but that isn't it. The whole thing's a parable about money. And like I said, he sold a whole lot of them. And you know, they're saying it's the funniest children's book of all time. It was never meant to be funny. It was meant to be a parable. It's just the kids caught on to it like that, so he decided to cash in on it. So anyway, if you go to timbosplace.com, I've got a link to probably the best short teaching essay about it on page 1, timbosplace.com. If you could like and share it, I appreciate this. Thank you. Bye, and subscribe. Thanks.